November 4th, 1922. Deep in Egypt's Valley of the Kings, archaeologist Howard Carter, after years of digging in the blistering sun, found what he was looking for: a single hidden step. It was the entrance to the tomb of the boy king Tutankhamun, a time capsule sealed for over 3,300 years. When Carter and his sponsor, Lord Carnarvon, finally breached the doorway, they found a room overflowing with golden treasures and unimaginable wonders. But the story that grabbed the world's attention wasn't about the gold. It was about something else entirely. Newspaper headlines exploded, first celebrating the discovery, but then they took a darker turn. Financier of tomb dies suddenly. Mystery illness strikes archaeologist. Had Carter and Carnarvon unleashed a phantom force, a vengeful spirit? Did they uncover a pharaoh's curse, or just one of history's greatest and deadliest stories? The deaths were real, but was it ancient magic or something else? The legend of the curse ignited with the man who paid for it all, George Herbert, the 5th Earl of Carnarvon. In February 1923, he stood beside Carter as they opened the burial chamber itself, the moment of a lifetime. A few weeks later, that triumph seemed to curdle into tragedy. While shaving in his hotel in Cairo, Lord Carnarvon nicked a mosquito bite. The cut became infected, and soon he was battling a raging fever. On April 5th, 1923, Lord Carnarvon was dead from what doctors diagnosed as blood poisoning that led to pneumonia. The timing was just too perfect for the newspapers to ignore. The story quickly took on a life of its own, especially with the help of a dramatic and likely untrue detail that at the very moment of Carnarvon's death, all the lights in Cairo flickered and died. This was sensational stuff, and the public ate it up. Even famous figures like Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the creator of Sherlock Holmes, chimed in, suggesting the death was caused by elementals created by ancient priests to guard the tomb. What the stories often left out was that Carnarvon was in poor health to begin with. A serious car accident years earlier had left him with chronic lung infections and a weakened immune system. But a logical explanation was no match for a supernatural one. The pharaoh's curse had its first and most famous victim. The legend of the curse ignited with the man who paid for it all, George Herbert, the 5th Earl of Carnarvon. In February 1923, he stood beside Carter as they opened the burial chamber itself, the moment of a lifetime. A few weeks later, that triumph seemed to curdle into tragedy. While shaving in his hotel in Cairo, Lord Carnarvon nicked a mosquito bite. The cut became infected, and soon he was battling a raging fever. On April 5th, 1923, Lord Carnarvon was dead from what doctors diagnosed as blood poisoning that led to pneumonia. The timing was just too perfect for the newspapers to ignore. The story quickly took on a life of its own, especially with the help of a dramatic and likely untrue detail: that at the very moment of Carnarvon's death, all the lights in Cairo flickered and died. After Lord Carnarvon's death, the media had a field day. The list of victims began to grow, with reporters connecting almost any death, no matter how remote, to the tomb. George J. Gould, a wealthy American who visited the tomb, died from a fever a few months later in 1923. Then there was Aubrey Herbert, Carnarvon's half-brother, who died from sepsis following a dental procedure 5 months after the Earl. Prince Ali Kamel Fahmy Bey of Egypt also visited the tomb and was shot and killed by his wife in July 1923. Sir Archibald Douglas Reed, a radiologist who was scheduled to X-ray the mummy, died in 1924 from an illness before he could even start. Arthur Mace, a member of Carter's team, died in 1928 from pleurisy and pneumonia, not arsenic poisoning as is often claimed. Perhaps the most chilling story is that of Hugh Evelyn White, another archaeologist on the team. He took his own life in 1924, and one dramatic but unsubstantiated story claims he left a note written in his own blood: "I have succumbed to a curse which forces me to disappear." Each tragedy added fuel to the fire. Richard Bethel, Carter's secretary, died in his bed in 1929 from what was suspected to be a smothering. The next year, his father, Lord Westbury, died by suicide, allegedly jumping from an apartment where he kept artifacts from the tomb. But were these deaths the work of a phantom pharaoh, or a string of unrelated tragedies, skillfully woven together by a press hungry for a supernatural narrative? For every believer, there's a skeptic demanding answers. As the so-called body count rose, scientists started to wonder if the killer wasn't a spirit, but something microscopic. For 3,300 years, the tomb was a sealed container. Along with the mummy, it held offerings of food like fruit and meat. In that dark, airtight space, this created a perfect breeding ground for dormant and potentially dangerous fungal spores like aspergillus. When the seal was broken, these ancient spores could have been released into the air. Lord Carnarvon, with his history of lung problems, would have been especially vulnerable. Inhaling toxic mold could easily have led to the kind of severe pneumonia that contributed to his death. A similar story is often told about the 1970s opening of the tomb of Polish King Casimir IV, where several researchers died in the years that followed. Though the timeline of those deaths is often exaggerated, traces of the same aspergillus fungus were found. Beyond fungi, sealed spaces can contain other toxic gases like ammonia and formaldehyde, which could cause respiratory issues. Suddenly, the curse didn't sound so magical. It sounded more like a workplace hazard. The science is plausible, but it doesn't explain everything. Toxic mold can't account for a murder, suicides, or other varied causes of death, and when you look at the numbers, the whole curse narrative falls apart. A study published in the British Medical Journal found that of the 58 people present when the tomb and sarcophagus were opened, only 8 died within the next 12 years. The rest lived on, many to a ripe old age. A 2002 study showed that the survival rates of those exposed to the tomb were no different than for people of the same age and background who were never exposed. The last survivor of that inner circle was Lady Evelyn Herbert, Lord Carnarvon's daughter. She was right there with her father and Carter, one of the first people to step inside. If there was a curse, she should have been a prime target. Yet, she lived for another 57 years. Passing away in 1980 at the age of 78. And what about the man at the center of it all? Howard Carter spent more time in the tomb than anyone, meticulously cataloguing thousands of artifacts over a decade. He was the one who personally lifted the solid gold mask from Tutankhamun's face. If the curse were real, he should have been its #1 victim. Instead, Carter lived for another 17 years, dying of natural causes in 1939 at the age of 64. When asked about the curse, he famously dismissed it as Tommy rot. For a century, the debate has raged between ancient superstition and modern science, but in a fascinating twist, recent discoveries have added a new final chapter to the story. The very same type of fungus that was once feared as the secret killer behind the curse, Aspergillus flavus, is now being studied for its life-saving potential. Researchers have discovered that this fungus produces a unique class of molecules called asparagimycins. In lab studies, these compounds have shown incredible promise in killing certain cancer cells, particularly leukemia, by stopping them from dividing. It's an almost poetic irony. The organism that fueled a legend of death and revenge might one day give us a powerful new tool to fight disease. The pharaoh's curse could actually become a cure, so the curse that killed everyone? It turns out, it didn't. When you look past the chilling headlines, you find a much more rational explanation. A few explainable deaths, a handful of tragic coincidences, and a whole lot of journalistic imagination. Most of the people connected to the tomb lived long, full lives. And the man who made the discovery, Howard Carter, outlasted the legend by nearly 2 decades. The story of Tutankhamun's curse is a perfect example of how a good story can become bigger than the truth. But now it's your turn. Was it a pharaoh's vengeance, a series of explainable events, or something else entirely? Let us know what you think in the comments below.